Hey, Presidente, I hope you are feeling brave, because the Voodoo DLC is here in Tropico 4. This video is going to tell you all about the brand new DLC, what it comes with, and more importantly, is it any good? So, let's get rolling. Well, greetings ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my review of the Voodoo DLC for Tropico 4. This is the brand new DLC as of July 2013, and as like most of the DLCs, it comes with a mission, a costume, a trait, and a building. And the mission here is quite unique, and I'm going to be uploading my full playthrough of the mission next week, but it actually manages to change the gameplay quite a lot because there is no industry allowed in that DLC mission at all. So you've got to do it all through agriculture and tourism, but that works quite nicely because the new building does give you some big bonuses. Well, it gives you a significant bonus to tourism if you use it the right way, so that is pretty handy. The costume that the game comes with is a basically a witch doctor voodoo style. It's a kind of a skull and headdress type costume, and you'll see it coming up here. It reminds me quite a lot of the characters in the Live and Let Die James Bond movie. If you've seen that, Baron Samandi, I think, or something like that, it was the guy in the movie. But it's quite a cool costume. To be honest, I don't tend to change my costume quite a lot when I play. But if I did, this certainly would be one I check out because it does look a little bit different. The trait, as expected, is called Witch Doctor, and it does a few little things, this one. It increases nationalistic respect, decreases religious respect, as I guess Christianity and Voodoos don't really get along, but it also means that citizens need healthcare less often. And actually, during the DLC mission when I was trying this trait out, I did find I was actually able to buy clinics a lot less and buy cathedrals a lot less until a far later on. But I also found that my religious factions were nearly always miserable, and I think part of that was related to carrying this trait. So you can afford to have less kind of cathedrals and things like that in the early on, but do expect to pay for it by having to train up priests and putting them in your churches and cathedrals. The other part of the trait is quite interesting as well, the plus 10 nationalists, because if you use it 5 times it powers up, which would actually give you plus 25% nationalist respect. And if you're using a strategy of kind of pushing people towards various political ideologies, you could then build your city in such a way that would actually please them. I was trying to take full advantage of the new building, so I definitely pushed my traits towards the tourism aspect rather than the industry one. For the DLC mission in particular, but I was actually able to create a quite formidable tourist-based economy that was bringing in a good kind of £200,000 a year by the end of the mission. Now, the mission itself is partially voiced. It kind of does that slightly irritating thing of they've kind of voiced the first line of what people say and then you just kind of read the rest. There aren't any new characters. They've kind of reused the pictures that they already have and kind of claimed that they've been overtaken by various voodoo people, which I must admit feels a little bit like they didn't really want to put any kind of new images into the game, but at the same time wanted to kind of spice up the plot. And I guess it works, but I'm not sure how difficult it would have been to actually put a new character or two in there. But the plot does work quite well. The idea is that the island is cursed and this causes various disasters to appear ever so often, but it also means that you can persuade certain gods, in quotes, to be in your favour, which means that you can do various voodoo incantations to get things like free hotels, free amenities. You can gamble as well, which is an interesting choice. Some of the missions kind of say, well, if you take this voodoo spell, you can have this big benefit, but there's going to be a random disaster, and that worked quite nicely as well in terms of where it would kind of offer me things like 25 college graduates, which early on is a pretty big deal, or a big amount of money, or 5 free fishermen. That's the fisherman's wharfs, but each time knowing if I took it there was going to be a disaster and thinking about whether I could afford to pay for whatever the disaster might be. The other slightly new thing that this DLC had was the idea of choice. In most of the missions, you just go through a completely linear path, but in this DLC, you actually get an option. If you look at the screen right now, this is quite a key choice. I think this was either the second or the third big part of the mission, and you can choose what you want. You can choose if you want your target to be a population one, if you want it to be a building one, if you want it to be an export one, and I think that's something in Tropico we haven't necessarily seen before, the idea that you can kind of choose your mission. And that definitely does set this DLC apart. Perhaps a slight downside might be, though, I appeared to pick the wrong one. I picked the first one, which was the export fish one, and it took me absolutely ages. And you'll see if you watch the playthrough that I upload next week, you'll see that I end up with a brilliant city, and I really enjoy the tourism aspect of it, and I enjoy the new building. But exporting 10,000 fish took me a lot longer than I was expecting. And perhaps if you do buy this, I strongly recommend you go for one of the other two. Now, the building itself is also pretty cool. It's kind of like a haunted mansion tourist attraction. It's in the luxury section, but doesn't require any power, and it only costs 8,000. It also, you can use it to give to have effects on the tourists that enter there. You can tell it to make the tourists have a chance of wanting to stay on your island longer. You can tell them to give them plus 10% happiness as a tourist or something like that. And I actually found it was a really popular destination that the tourists go to. I don't know if you ever find, but I often find that when I build certain tourist attractions that no one wants to go to, and some that are really popular. This was really popular. In fact, it was so popular I built a second one, but then it turned out that no one wanted to go to the second one. So I suggest perhaps you only build one, but it looks good, and it also gets a nice bonus if you put it in an ugly area of the town. I wasn't actually able to experiment with this because the island I was playing on was actually quite beautiful all over, but one of the options said that if you put it in an ugly area of the town, it got a really high bonus to tourist satisfaction. And keeping with the theme of choice that we talked about earlier, when you do build the Voodoo Manor in the DLC mission, you get 3 choices, 3 benefits that the Voodoo Manor will give you for the rest of that mission. You can convert people to loyalists, or you can get immigrants regularly, or you can get money regularly. All 3 have their own kind of benefits and drawbacks, but again, it was nice to see this idea of choice, of variety put in. And actually, I think it's a bit of a shame that actually you don't get this choice putting this building into your normal DLC missions, but your normal missions, but perhaps it might be a touch overpowered. So what do I think of the DLC as a whole, and would I recommend it? Well, let's break them down. The costume is a cool costume, but it depends if you care about costumes. The trait is something different. I think it's got potential, and if you're the kind of player that finds that you always struggle a little bit with healthcare in your cities, then that's definitely a trait that you could use. The building I really like, and every time I make a tourist-based industry in one of my cities from now on, I'm gonna put one of those Voodoo Manors down, because it works well, it's pretty cheap, and it's popular amongst the tourists. And the mission itself, I actually thought I really liked the way that they had tried to do something different with it. What I didn't like was the fact that there weren't actually many missions in it, but the middle mission especially was a very, very long one, and it actually took me so long. You can see here that my actual city ends up being quite big. I mean, maybe I'm actually just a terrible player, but it took me a long time to complete that middle mission. I was getting a little bit bored by the end, but I really did like the aspects of choice. I really did like the fact that there were these kind of voodoo curses and voodoo rewards going around. Some of the voodoo curses were a bit frustrating, but again, it was something different, and I think DLC should be something different, not just more of the same. And I think this mission really did provide something that was different. There is not a single factory on my island, and yet I've managed to put together a fully functioning economy, which was fun. Is it worth the price tag? Maybe. I personally would suggest that if it comes out in a sale, you grab it without hesitation. I mean, if the price goes down, absolutely grab it. At the price it's currently on, if you've got the spare pennies lying around and you're still enjoying Tropico, then go for it. But it's probably a little bit overpriced for what it is. But like I said in my previous DLC review, if they stuck a bunch of these DLCs together and charged $5 for it, I would definitely say that was a good value package with lots of things to enjoy. So there's the review of the Voodoo DLC. If you found this review helpful, then please give the video a like and do subscribe to the channel, as I'm going to be putting up my full playthrough of the DLC mission up next week. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments section and I will try and get back to you. Take care, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.